welcome to the interview today. I'm happy we had a moment to get together.
Fantastic. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
That's a nice place.
Yes, it has its moments. I know you're up in Portland. I'm sure you're...
I almost bought a house in Phoenix, and I always regretted that I didn't.
Probably would have wanted to invest in flame retardant as well. You know, the weather is kind of severe here. But you've toured through, you know what it's like.
Yeah, I lived in Vegas for a while.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm sure
you've got a Travis Bean. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, it's one of those little things that pops up along the way. I'm surprised you knew what it was, but then I guess I'm not. With that collection that's over your shoulder, I'm sure you've seen a few Travis Beans, had a chance to play some.
I remember there was a music store where I grew up that was a dealer, so they had new ones.
Oh.
You know, back in the early '80s. So, and I think the Jackson 5 played them.
I've seen some in the hands of Jerry Garcia. Perry from Aerosmith had one. Mm-hmm. There are a few that are floating around. They're pretty unique, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a cool opportunity to just play an odd guitar, have something to talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say welcome to DaBelly, or welcome to the Skype interview, and congratulations on I Can Destroy.
Thank you very much. Is it DaBelly of the Beast?
Let's hope it doesn't go quite that far. Could be the Beast, but you never know.
Yeah.
I Can Destroy came out today, didn't it? Yeah, today's the release date on it.
I think so. I mean, in these days, it's interesting the concept of something coming out. You know, in the old days, you'd sneak into the record store to see if the vinyl actually showed up, and also you'd have to be concerned about the name of either your band or if you're a solo artist, to see who you were next to. So like if I put it under Paul Gilbert, I might be put next to Andy Gibb, or because it was all alphabetical.
And of course that would make a difference as far as your fans actually finding your music. Yes.
Exactly. If you just had alphabetically, if you had a good advantage, right next to Mr. Big would be next to Metallica or Madonna or Marillion. So it was always, the Racer X was next to like Todd Rundgren, so that was cool.
Well, that worked out. Yeah, I'm sure that worked out great. Well, the album is great. I haven't heard your music in a while. This is the first record of yours I think I picked up in, I bet, 10 years. And it's very bluesy, very classic rock, and it's cool, and I like the vibe to it. There's a little jazz feel to it, but of course, that's some of the chord selection. I'm just really happy with the songs you just put out. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
What did it take to put the album together? How long have you been working on it?
It came together quick, and in a way, everything I do has to come together quick. There's not enough time to do things slowly. I'm a new dad, so I've got to spend time with my boy. I don't have to, I want to. And I also have an online guitar school, which I do thousands of videos for. And, of course, touring and, the various things you do. So, squeezing an album, it's like, how am I going to do this? And so, fortunately, I was able to put together a really good team of people that not only played and sang well, but who also just kept me inspired and producing the music very quickly. So I had a great producer, Kevin Shirley, and the band was great. I hired two other guys that play guitar and sing.
Yes.
Freddie Nelson and Tony Spinner, and so I'm still kind of the lead vocalist, but they, I throw the ball to them as almost often as I can, just to have a variety of vocal sounds, and it gives us opportunity to do a lot of harmonies as well, both guitar harmonies and vocal harmonies.
I read that you have been playing for enough years where now you're imagining the music in your head. You don't have to necessarily work the song out in the sense of playing through it several times and finding the melody lines, the guitar line that you want to put together, but it's actually now appearing in your mind, and you're able to kind of go in with an idea of exactly where you want to go with a certain melody or song.
Well, that was actually my goal before I ever picked up the instrument. Because as a little kid, I had melodic ideas and riff ideas, and it's amazing how learning of the instrument can throw you off track in that sense, because the way guitar is typically taught, which is not necessarily a bad thing, is you learn all the scales, the arpeggios, and the chords, and those are the things that are the tools to make music. But often, the way it's almost like reading the dictionary, where the dictionary has all the words, but they're not in the order that people use when they speak, and so that's sort of like scale practice. You learn all the notes, but then you realize this isn't the order that they come in real life, or when you make music. And the same way, if you spend all the time reading the dictionary, you realize, wait a minute, this is not the way people speak. I've got to have another look at this.
It would seem like that if we were all taught the notes in whatever order they're supposed to be, that we'd all sound exactly the same. So kind of what you're getting at there is the personality of the music and the creativity that's inside the person to take these basic building blocks, these elements, and to form them together. And that's the uniqueness of each artist, of course.
There's so many aspects of music, and a lot of the most important aspects of music, especially in rock and blues, and I would say in jazz too, are maybe everything. I won't leave out any styles. But one of the most important aspects are the things that aren't easily written down or notated. And I've learned this from teaching, because I'll hear a student and they'll have the right notes, they'll have the right rhythms, orders right, but still something's off, and it's my job to figure out what it is. And it turns out that it's not like mysterious stuff. It's things like dynamics and choosing if you sustain a note all the way to the end of the beat, or if you stop it early, and the kind of different tones you can get. And there's a checklist of stuff, but it's not. The human brain isn't think enough to be able to juggle all those elements as you play, so it has to become instinct, and that's why it's difficult to teach, is because most of the people that have really good instincts have by the time they get them, they've forgotten how they got them, and maybe they even it was a very intuitive process, and so to teach someone who doesn't have that stuff, you really have to dig deep and figure out, like, what is what are dynamics, and how do you make that happen? Because again, the people that are masters of that stuff often did it very intuitively, and really don't know in an intellectual way how they did it.
Well, it's actually very interesting what you just said, in the context that you as an artist probably aren't even aware of what some of your stylistic differences are. You'll play a solo, maybe you have a young guitarist approach you and say, you played this solo on a Mr. Big album 20 years ago, and I can't seem to get it just right. And you'll say, yeah, all the notes are there, all the phrases are right, and it's the stylistic approach in which you actually played it at the time that makes it just that little bit different that they're looking for, those little subtle nuances. Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting that everybody is so different in those aspects.
Yeah, well, it's a lot like speaking a language.
Very much so. And
you might have somebody who's studied a language for a long time, and they can write it, and they can read it, but when they speak it, their accent might be really strange. You listen, you go like, well, yeah, you got it, but it's not native. That's your second language.
I bet you find it within yourself too. You look back at some of your older work, maybe with Racer X, and you say, how the hell did I do that?
Well, I mean, I've been playing a long time, so that I have expanded, and there's some things where it is. Well, I mean, there's video footage too. I'll look back, and then there I am, 19 years old, and I'm going, wow, there's things that my hands would do then that I don't really do anymore. But the same is true for now. There's a lot of knowledge I have now that I certainly didn't have then.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned Kevin Shirley as your producer on this record. You've worked with him before on a Mr. Big album. What does he bring to the table for you? Is he kind of a kindred soul?
We had such a good time with the Mr. Big album. It just went quickly, and much quicker than most of the albums I've done before, and not in a hurried way. I mean, we still did what we needed to do, but he just guided us in such a way where we emphasized the right things, and he was able to. In the studio, it's easy to get bogged down. You can sit there and try to make everything perfect, and and
Yes.
you can really spend a lot of time emphasizing things that not only may not matter, but actually degrade the energy. And Kevin's really just a master of being aware of the overall the big picture of the energy, the sound, and he's great at the details as well. But he knows where to put the emphasis, and he knows how to get that out of the musicians. And so when faced with the prospect of being a solo artist and working with him, it did strike a bit of fear into me, because I knew that, unlike when I produce albums myself, we're not going to be spending an entire day, punching line by line through a vocal. And, so I put a lot more work into the pre-production, and also just, like you said, it's the style of the record is more classic rock, blues with some jazz, which is, to me, a style that works really well with live performances. And it's, there's still a structure to it, but it's a little more flexible. And so, as long as we've got a good feel with the performances, Kevin's able to capture that, and I just wanted to make sure to bring him a great band, and knowing that I was going to work with him inspired me to put a great band together, because I knew I wasn't going to fix it later with overdubs or lots of editing.
Well, as you've already pointed out, it's easy for a musician to get into the studio and, rather than clean up a record, sterilize it. And you discover that later as the fan when you go to the show and you see those guys on stage and the guitar player goes into his solo, and it's so much better because the emotion's there, the fluidity of the moment, and you realize that unfortunately they just sort of missed it in the studio. And,
well, playing an instrument or singing, it's in a way it's so challenging to do either of those things at a professional level that it's hard not to be concerned with mistakes and be concerned with perfection, and you're just trying to have this craft without you're trying to get the boat in the water without it sinking. But at some point, hopefully you get to the point where you can not care about that as much, because it's it's going to be okay, and then you can get back to the emotion and the style and just enjoying the process.
You mentioned how busy you are these days. I was in preparation for the interview. I was going over your bio, and I was impressed, surprised with the amount of projects you've been involved with. You're approaching the Mike Portnoy school of working on every band in the world. You understand what I'm saying? In fact, you're in a lot of bands with Mike. It must be nice to have that ability to get out and play with other musicians and sort of fit into other things and express yourself in many, many ways.
Yeah, and I remember being in Mr. Big, and we kind of made a pact, the early days of the band, to really not do projects outside of the band, because we just wanted to establish the band, and we all agreed that it would sort of, if we started doing all these solo projects, it would kind of weaken it. So there was a time in my life when I didn't do those things. And when I left the band and became a solo artist, it really was a joy to be able to just sort of do anything. And I realized from a business standpoint that it's probably not a good idea. If you establish your brand and stick to it, that's kind of a better business model. But I'm not in it to be. Of course, I want to put food on the table and pay the rent. But I really love music, and I really enjoy playing with different folks and doing stretching my musical boundaries. And so I'm willing to I'm willing to degrade the brand, or not degrade, but willing to dilute the brand a little bit in order to have that luxury of musical freedom.
That's a wonderful thing. You've been, this is an anniversary of sorts for you, 30 years. Congratulations on that, by the way. That's an incredible staying power to be a musician in this day and age and play for 30 years and be in the spotlight and have that joy and that fun.
Yeah.
When you first stepped onto the stage with Racer X, Street Lethal, I guess was your first album. I remember that coming out and I was shocked. I mean, here is this hired gun, well, not even hired gun, it was your band. One of the fastest guitar players I had ever heard. That's how you made your brand. And then looking forward now, and well, I guess the question I'm trying to ask, back in '86, what did you see for a vision of yourself, not realizing you'd have 30 years in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, being 18 or 19 years old, I was, my view of the future was pretty short.
Yeah, about a week.
Not that I thought it was going to end. It's just, when you're that young, at least for me, you just can't see that far. And there was so much going on. I mean, I was just excited about the present because I had made an album.
Yeah.
At that time, that was an amazing thing to do. You'd get the actual vinyl. And vinyl is a mysterious process. I mean, now if you go to Office Depot, you can buy a big thing of CDs and you can put it in your CD burner. You can make your own CD. But vinyl is some mysterious place they made it, and so it was much more much more of a sort of a exclusive club to get into that rock and roll world. And again, with like promoting yourself internationally, now anybody can load something on YouTube.
Yes.
Back then, you had to convince a label to record you. So again, here's me now. Sort of waxing about the I don't know if they were good old days, but the old days. But yeah, what was my vision of the future? When I was a teenager, the thing that I would get really excited about was practicing, because I started playing guitar when I was 9, and even though from 9 to 19, that 10 years, I mean 10 years is a fairly long time, but during that 10-year period, my abilities and knowledge of the guitar were expanding so quickly that was like the most exciting thing. I remember, I was going to high school, and I would just be so excited about summer vacation because I would think, summer's coming, and I can practice 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I would just get excited about how I would sound by the time the summer ended, and I'd have to go back to school again. And I think like in that 3 months, I'm really gonna be moving forward. That's gonna be. So I was just excited about investing in myself as a musician, and I didn't really have I didn't know anything about the music business, or that was just so mysterious. But I very much literally had my hands on the instrument, and I could feel that it was something that I could control. It was very much, I put in a certain amount of time, I make a certain amount of progress, and that was very satisfying and very motivating to just keep cranking that machine.
It's interesting, you keeping your hands on what you could control. You kind of put your faith in the music business back in those days. You weren't as involved with the production and picking out the album cover. Perhaps you're in that. Maybe the single, the record company had a pretty significant say in all of that. And of course, the mystery, as you said, of producing a record. You kind of send off your tapes, and it comes back and it's a piece of vinyl. And yeah, it was a big mystery. Yeah, I understand where you're going with it. These days, it's so much different. It's much easier in some ways and much more difficult in others. There's so many people today that are that have the capability of producing a record that it has diluted the amount of artists that are out there. The good music, it's you can still find it. It's still all there, but there's so many of other artists to pick through to find it, to get to it.
Yeah, and the temptations are different.
Yes.
And the main temptation to me is what you can do in the studio. It's so easy to just go I mean, and it's absolutely, I've succumbed to this temptation so many times. It's expensive to put a band together. I got to pay the guys, and I'll just play the bass myself. And it's expensive to pay the producer. I'll just produce it myself. And you end up doing stuff that you might be able to do yourself, but it doesn't give you the same energy as if you get other people involved. And I forget, there's some crazy experiment where people put their pinkies underneath a table, and then they all lift it together, and it just seems possible that you could lift some heavy table with your pinkies. And it's the same kind of thing when you get a team of musicians and engineers and producers together, and you can really do things that even with all this technology, you just wouldn't be able to do by yourself and have the same. It would be missing something in important ways. And I've done records both ways, and we'll probably continue to. So I sort of go back and forth. So sometimes when you work with people, you go like, I just want to be left alone and experiment by myself. There's that part too. It's nice to sometimes to just sort of be the mad scientist left alone in your laboratory. But I've got a lot of gratitude for the people that I worked with on this album, and I know that if I had been the mad scientist alone in the laboratory, it wouldn't have come out nearly as well.
Well, the people that you're working with, not only Kevin Shirley, the producer, but the other musicians on the record, they're a wall for you to bounce that ball off of, to kind of throw an idea and have it reflect back from their perspective, and that, of course, changes your perspective subtly.
Yeah, and we just listen to each other. It's you play differently when if I'm overdubbing a guitar in the studio, I focus on that and I play it with a certain energy. But if I know that I'm accompanying a singer, or if I hear two other guitar players playing simultaneously, it'll change. I might stay out of the way for that part, and it just makes room for everything. And I imagine it makes. I didn't mix the record because Kevin did, but I imagine it makes it a lot easier to mix because in a way, a live band that's listening to each other will mix themselves.
True enough. Yes.
They'll sort of play dynamically, and it's not like some isolated part that happened with a click track where and then the other parts come in and they fit, but not like they really should.
You recently moved to Portland. I know you lived in Los Angeles for a lot of years, and as you mentioned earlier, you're in Vegas. Does the location in which you live, do you find that influences the style of music or the way you feel about what you're doing?
I think, one of the reasons I moved here was just to try to have more time. I moved to a part of town where I could really walk to just about everything, and so I get my exercise on my way to the grocery store or the way to having lunch, and I don't have to spend as much time in the car, which is kind of for a person who writes songs like "Everybody Use Your Goddamn Turn Signal," maybe it's time to do a little more walking, a little less driving, and besides that, sure, absolutely. I find when I go on the road and or in a when I'm in a hotel, sometimes just having the lack of distraction. A hotel is a great place to have no distractions because you're just like in this plain boring room with your guitar, and it's in a way a really nice place to focus. Where you're at home there can be 1,000 things going on.
Absolutely.
But the house I got, I'm in my man cave with all my guitars and recording gear, so it's nice because I can focus down here pretty well. Works
out. You have the Great Guitar Escape coming up here in July. Is it third year, fourth year?
It's the third one I've done, but I also did a camp with Joe Satriani called G4.
Yes.
And that was actually in Cambria at the same venue where I'm doing this year's Great Guitar Escape. So I've been there once before. It was right by the ocean, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. It is a beautiful area. Let's see. This year you're with, and I'm reading it off the paper. Forgive me. Megadeth, Kiko. I'm going to say his name wrong. I'm going to get it wrong. Lurario.
Kiko
Loureiro. There we go. Danny Elfman, Bumblefoot, and Bruce Boulay.
Actually, there's been a change. Bruce called or sent me an email, and he's not able to make it this year. Which I was like, oh man, Bruce, But I got to step into his shoes. I got Mimi Fox.
Oh, there you go.
Who I worked with before at the last Great Guitar Escape, and she's one of my favorites jazz guitar players of all time because she just plays with a lot of fire and a lot of anger. And that's unusual in jazz. Jazz is sort of a that's the kind of music. There's all kinds of jazz. It's a huge, giant genre, but it can be something that you play in hotel lobbies or you play while you're having dinner, and it can be something really nice for a hotel lobby. But she's got a lot more teeth to her the way she attacks the instrument than a lot of the stereotypical jazz. and but at the same time, she's got like, the harmonic knowledge and just and it was so much fun to jam with her because a lot of the jam songs are we're jamming over rock tunes. We're playing, Waiting for the Bus by ZZ Top or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then she'll come in and she'll bring these notes in that you thought were all the forbidden notes, and she makes them perfect. So
That's funny.
I'll miss Bruce, but I'm really excited that Mimi's able to come in and save the day.
The Great Guitarscape is a good opportunity for everybody to just sort of get together, and it's there are other artists that are doing it as well, and it's for all the same reasons and for all the right reasons. You're pressing the flesh with your fans, and you get an opportunity just to be around people that appreciate your work, and you can share some of that knowledge, much like you do with Artist Works, and teaching online and through Skype as we're obviously doing now, or talking a little bit about Skype. But yeah, Artist Works and so on. So I see these adventures, these little escapes, as you put it, the Great Guitar Escape, as great opportunities for the fans to actually reach out and be around the artists that they admire. So
it's really enjoyable for me because when you talk about artists or fans, we're human beings.
Exactly.
And typically, before these sort of things happened, the typical way that we would meet would be like, I'm coming out of the venue after a show, and I'm exhausted, and I want to get into the bus and go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's almost, it's the part of my day where, it's almost like, you're walking up the steps to your bedroom and you just want to brush your teeth and get in bed. And it's almost like, imagine doing that and then suddenly, 25 guys are in your house and they all want you to sign something. And it's like, they're people that you value. Like, I'm really happy that they're supporting me, but just now's not the right time.
Yeah.
And so that venue to the bus situation, that's always been rough for me. But these things, the camps, and of course my online school as well, they allow much more time, and it's a better time. And I'm there with good energy. It's not right before I'm going to bed. It's in the morning. I'm up. I'm ready to rock. And I've got all day, and so it's so much nicer situation for just human interaction. It's nobody's rushed. You've got time to hang out. I'm not trying to scurry away somewhere, and we got time to talk. We got time to play. So it's we can all be normal. It's not like I'm not feeling like an office worker, scribbling my name and trying to get to the next one as fast as I can. So the typical fan thing of the old days, you had to do them, but to me they were really unsatisfying because of the reason I talked about it. And whereas like the Great Guitars get totally satisfying because everybody's smiling, including me, and we just have a great time musically and having breakfast.
Yeah, like I said, a wonderful opportunity, and I guess people don't realize that you guys are people too. Maybe more today, there's a better understanding of it. But back when I was a kid, maybe when you were a kid, we saw these musicians as deities. That record was the closest you ever got to, Joe Perry or whoever you idolized as a kid. And so when you actually saw them in concert, it was the greatest moment because you were in the same room, even though you were 100 yards away. But today it's a little more interactive, and that's a great thing. Internet has done wonderful things. Skype, for instance, has done wonderful things to bring people together and give you that opportunity. And that kind of leads me to Artist Works and the way you're teaching guitar today. Tell me a little bit about that.
That is, well, first of all, for people who've never, it's a subscription site, so you've got to you got to pay a small amount to get in, but once you're in, you've got access to everything, and everything is the full video guitar course that I put together for rock guitar. But the thing that really keeps the site kind of living and breathing are the video exchanges, and what that is it's not live like Skype would be, and it's actually I think a lot better because of that. So what happens is the student will make a video of them, asking a question or playing something, or it's pretty open. There's not, you can do whatever you want. There's parts in the course where they'll recommend, like, how about sending this in? And then I make a video response to that, with an answer or advice or, ideas. And then those two are paired together as the video exchange. And that's not only for the student, but everybody on the school can see that. So, if I give one lesson, it's aimed at that one person, it's focused on their question, but everybody else can learn from it as well. And since the school opened 4 years ago, I've done over 4,000 of these video exchange videos, which, besides the actual teaching, is a whole lot of editing.
That's amazing. Yes.
Actually, I don't edit to fix things. I just edit to clean up the beginning and the end, so you don't see me with my remote control. But it's really becoming. I mean, all those 4,000 plus videos are also in the archives on the site. So you sign up and you immediately have access to all that. There's a search feature. So, if you're looking for alternate picking, you type that in, and the 300 alternate picking videos will come up, and with further explanation, you can really search for what you want. But the thing I like about it is I really get to meet the students. I've taught in a lot of different formats. I've taught at GIT, I've taught privately, I've taught everything from 10 to 300 people, and depending on the situation. And I think that this video exchange system, just because of it takes some preparation. I mean, the student has to prepare to make their video. I have to prepare to make my answer. So everything is a little bit more thought out than if it was in real time. I mean, certainly there are advantages to real time, but the thing with this is that preparation that you do to make the video is valuable. I think you get a lot of value out of that.
That's an excellent point. Yes.
And I can see it in the results. I see people at every level. I've had people that are almost total beginners when they sign up. I've had people that are professional career band people, sign up and lurk in the background. So it's at every level, and actually, I mean, rock is a pretty big genre. So we do everything from we go from fusion to the occasional Johnny Cash tune.
I suspect that the students, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that the students sort of begin to answer some of their own questions because of the preparation they go into putting together their video and forwarding it to you, and it causes them to think about what they're asking, and of course their approach to what they're doing.
That's a valuable thing too. I mean, there was a period a few years ago when I really had some burning questions about jazz chords and things I didn't know so much about. Sure. So I took some lessons from some guys I knew at GIT, and had a great time being sitting in the student chair. And that was the thing, is like after about 3 lessons, I basically, I still needed to practice, but I had the material I needed to work on, but I still had on my calendar another lesson booked, and that made me think, well, what else could I ask? And that process of thinking of a new question I actually learned the most from that out of the whole thing. To sort of realize, like, well, what else needs to be done, and it made me look at some things that I hadn't looked at. So that was really a valuable thing. You're right.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, I would say, well, who's listening to us? Is this everybody, or is it musicians, or? Well,
primarily it's musicians and fans. I guess it's a little bit of everybody. I'd say the majority of it is going to be musician based.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, of course, I'm always a guitar brain, so.
Come on.
For anybody who plays guitar, especially beginners who are, I love teaching beginners because they're still flexible.
Oh yeah.
And I would say, and actually for the really young ones, like because younger people tend to have smaller hands, they just haven't finished growing yet. And what can happen is with small hands. And it's funny, I of course have very big, large hands, which is a nice thing to have if you play guitar. And I think when guitar players think about hand size, they're thinking horizontally. Like, how far can I stretch?
Yes.
I get from the 12th fret to what? And it's a nice thing to be able to do, to have that horizontal stretch. But from teaching and listening, I began to realize that the vertical, the up and down stretch, is much more important. Mm. In order to be able to get your thumb over the top of the neck, to mute and to be able to pull against, to get bending and vibrato, And if you look at photos of the classic, sort of Hendrix on, if you look at any photo of Hendrix, his thumb's hanging way over. And even guys that weren't necessarily that, considered to be technical greats, like somebody like Paul McCartney. If you watch Paul McCartney play a D chord, look up Here, There, and Everywhere on YouTube and see him play an acoustic guitar. His thumb's hanging way over. And it's and what I realize is that people with smaller hands may not be able to reach that easily, so they give up, and they tend to use a more thumb behind the neck position, which is much more like classical. Yeah. And if you play classical guitar, that's fine, but for rock, you really need the thumb. I could talk for an hour about it, which I don't want to do. So you just have to take my word for it. You need the thumb over the top of the neck, and if you're and you can actually. With different instruments have different neck widths, and a lot of the like the metal guitars tend to have wider necks. So if you really want to go radical, go get like an old John Lennon Rickenbacker, which this tiny little neck, and then experiment with putting your thumb over or an old like
you can cover 5 strings with it,
just look for something with the skinnier neck, hang that thumb over and feel the power, because suddenly you can grip. And remember, that's one of the things that makes human beings human beings. A cat or a dog, or I think even, I don't know if even monkeys can grip the way humans can. We've got the opposable thumb. So be human. Use that opposable thumb. And
I've had this exact moment you're talking about at NAMM a bunch of years back. The very first time I met Billy Sheehan. You might have met Billy. Yeah. And I walked up to him and I shook his hand and I said, "Please do me a favor. Hold up your hand. I got to put mine next to yours." Yeah. And of course, I'm thinking that his fingers are 9 inches long because of the crazy stuff that he plays, and his hand's the same size as mine. And I was disappointed. It wasn't a case where he was just gifted. It was just he was so much better than me. And hey, it's life's lessons. It's the way it goes.
And in the end, the most important body part for playing music is the ears, or that part of the brain that listens.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for your time today. I'm happy that you've had a few moments to share with us.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, and keep rocking on DaBelly.
Thank you much. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What I get from you.